Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pirate Radio. I'm your host who needs no introduction. My guest also doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. We are back with a friend of the show, Arthur in California. We are going to be talking about the current war in Iran. So, I guess without further ado, if you're not aware, the United States, along with Israel, has been conducting an air war at this point, a naval war, mind you, which has been some badass footage, against the Iranian regime, the state of Iran, if you will. And there's a whole bunch of kind of weak ass propaganda that came out to kind of, I guess, convince us we needed to do this, starting back, it's been years where they've talked about a nuclear weapons program. We were told back in June that the nuclear weapons, the attack then was just about the nukes. It was not about regime change, and that all was a lie then. And now we've all been told, basically found out now that it is a complete lie. So, I'm curious my standing on it. I'll get your opinion or view on it here in a second, Arthur. My view on it is I don't want to go to war with Iran. I don't see what the point of it is. I don't see America's interest in it really whatsoever. I'm not fully bought into the we're only doing it on behalf of Israel, although there's quite a bit of evidence, especially the words out of Marco Rubio's mouth a few days ago, that suggests that that is somewhat accurate, if not 100% accurate. So I wish we weren't doing this. But that said, now that we're there, I would like to see full-blown let's go whole hog, dog off the chain style, which I think we're witnessing. As far as whatever you're going to do, whether it's naval or air, let's do it to the max. And I'm going to be honest, I have really enjoyed watching the naval footage, especially that sub take out that boat. So without further ado, Arthur, welcome. And what's your kind of broad overview of the current war?
Yeah, Rudy, thanks for having me back. I was looking back in my emails and stuff, and I saw that it's been about 2 months since I was on. Before we were discussing will conservatives govern, and it almost feels quaint our topics on that show. On what we were talking about, of course, domestic issues, and it was nothing but domestic issues. And for myself, this partly came out of nowhere, but not really, with Iran. That with this fear from the left, from the right, however you want to say it, whether it's influencers, whether it's politicians and pundits, this mantra of saying how, poor little Iran, they haven't done anything. Well, that's not quite true. But then, of course, as you said in the introduction on all these different reasonings for doing it, well, that's not exactly true either. But for myself, I think my biggest frustration, and maybe for a lot of us who follow this stuff way too closely, is finding a balanced perspective on these daily events. Because on the one hand, the 100% sunny, optimistic outlook, that's delusional. But at the same
Right.
time, the opposite viewpoint of having, total doom, this is all going to go bad, any outcome, no matter, that doesn't really hit the mark either for myself. And especially how just in a week, I mean, we're on what, day seven? This is day seven here. For myself, there's things that have happened and things that have not happened militarily and geopolitically that have been surprising to me, honestly. And especially after years of hearing these lists of these absolutes and predictions that if this line is crossed, if hostilities with Iran start, these things will occur. Mark it down. And it was said as gospel. But I will say that my takes tonight, the online sphere, at times, I get a feeling that giving a somber, nuanced take just usually upsets all sides. So I guess we can just jump into it.
Right. There is no nuance on the internet. Yeah, I guess so some of the things that I really find um problematic, to use a term I hate. And it's the lead up to the war. And taking into account a guy who should never really be taken seriously, Mark Levin, who's frothing at the mouth and going nuts, Coincidentally, my show last week was about the what looked like we were going to war with Iran, where I talked a whole bunch of shit about Mark Levin and how crazy he is, and all of the things he's posting and tweeting, and it is completely unhinged, talking about intercontinental ballistic missiles tipped with nuclear, biological, and chemical warheads that could hit Chicago and the East Coast, and like that's completely insane. Someone needs to take that man and put him into a mental asylum because he's lost it. But so if we get away from the crazy, some of the things that really bother the shit out of me, and you've heard this talking point. I think we've all heard this talking point, this fake statistic, if you will, of the Iranian regime. Once the protests kicked off in what was it, late December, early January, at some point the regime had had enough and they slaughtered 50,000 people in the streets. And I know you're a military veteran. Um, I'm not, but it doesn't take any sort of person who's ever been in combat to understand, like, just a casualty report in actual physical pitched combat between two belligerent sides. 50,000 people, and I've seen people repeat this constantly. Of it's 50,000 protesters that were killed dead in 2 days or less than a week. This is island hopping kind of territory between the United States Marine Corps and the Japanese Imperial Army. That's those kind of numbers in which both sides are killing each other at a just an exponential rate with artillery and airstrikes and of course machine guns and small arms. But 50,000 dead, that is, you have to use airstrikes, artillery. You're not just going to be able to roll up with the Toyota and a machine gun in the back of it and just start mowing people down, because they're going to run, and a lot of them are going to get away, and they're never going to come back out and protest again. So you get kind of one shot. Um, Curious your thoughts on those figures, and am I insane or what?
No, I don't think so, because we're talking 50,000 bodies, and it reminds me especially of that that age of the disease that was going to take us all out, that really isn't talked about
Mm-hmm.
enough, and especially what occurred there,
Right.
COVID, obviously, how thousands were going to be dead in the streets, and we would get the propaganda footage of, oh my gosh, look at that, there is one, freezer truck behind the hospital, or there's two, but all of these
Right.
figures and estimations, and I know you know as well as I do, driving around, especially here in California, with the excess of homeless we have here. We had the excess back then as well.
Right.
I kept questioning, where are all the bodies in the streets? Why are we not hearing of the tallies? And especially when you have contacts within the city, and just people that you can reach out to, and they're going, well, no, we're not getting that many bodies. And especially in this age of technology, even as they talk about, oh, well, they did the, not geofencing, but stopping anything coming out of there, so information couldn't be received. It's 2026. I assume you, myself, most of the audience, we're intelligent thinking human beings going, there would be pictures. There would be stuff coming out. This would be, someone would be getting, the Pulitzer for photography, or whatever it is, the awards for their footage of this atrocity. And
Right.
article after article of eyewitness accounts of what happened. And so it's, yeah, I just see it as that was a propaganda point. And to your other point, talking about, what is the purpose of this, and especially as you brought up the nukes, just last summer in Operation Midnight Hammer, what were we told constantly and constantly? This put them back, what, a decade, or this knocked out their capabilities for a long time. This is going to keep them safe. And so, yeah, I'm in total agreement. I don't see this as really, an overarching reasoning, because they might get nukes in next year or something. And I think it's a little bit bigger than that, actually. But we're the
I
messaging from,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, the messaging from the administration, 100%. It's atrocious. It's all over the place. I mean, they've been clear as mud. From what even to even call this. Is it
Right.
a conflict? Is it a special conflict or a special military operation? Is this just a mission?
Right.
Is it a war? I mean, by tomorrow to be called something else. And I will say straight, yes, we are at war with Iran. It is a war, straightforward. And I don't know why they're kind of dilly dallying around on that. My only guess to why they don't want to kind of name it as such is just once again politics with the UN, politics within DC of not actually being having to name it. That's all I can figure why they're tipping around on it. But as you pointed out too, key figures in the White House, Rubio, Trump himself, have not been concise on the objectives, and they've even tried to walk back statements, as you pointed out. Rubio saying how well Israel was going to hit them first, and so they were going to attack us, so we had to jump in, which
Right.
that just turns on everybody's tinfoil hat of like, hold on a second, you're telling us a client state in the Middle Eastern region is directing our foreign policy, our military foreign policy. So that didn't do any favors at all whatsoever. And the other
Yeah.
thing, oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, not only if Rubio is saying that, but there's dead American soldiers now because of that. And I don't think anyone in this country has the appetite for service members in body bags for, again, like you're saying, for what exactly?
Yeah, breathing into life, the meme. I'm not effing dying for Israel. We've all seen it. Guy with the beer. It's like, I mean, you pretty much just gave life to that entirely, whether or not it's the full picture at all. And we got to talk about these social media accounts, Rudy. I mean, the White House
Bro.
and
Yeah.
Homeland Security and whatnot. And I will fully admit, I like them, but I'm also a veteran and retired. Been there, done that. I get it. Okay, but this does not fully translate to the wider political audience, and giving flippant optics of Call of Duty style or EA Sports trailers. That's just not helpful, really. I mean, the one I just saw today was clips of MLB baseball players hitting home runs, and every time the bat, struck the ball, it would instantly snap to a clip of a nice, FLIR pod getting an explosion. And I'm like, that's cool. But it doesn't give any gravity. As you stated a second ago, we have dead American soldiers. This, it's not going to play to everybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm eating that shit up with like two spoons, um,
Yeah, I love it.
but
I love it. Yeah.
I like to see what we're capable of. I mean, it's, and you and I are not normies in this at all. But I work with my two brother-in-laws occasionally, more often than not, actually at this point. But in watching their reaction to stuff they see, and I'm not showing it to them. I'm not chiming in. If they ask me something, I'll respond. I mean, they know how kind of in depth and political I am to things, but I'm not pushing anything on them. But just seeing their reaction to some of the footage of bombs dropping. I did show one of my brother-in-laws the submarine because I mean, you gotta that's badass. That's like the first sub kill since like World War II, or at least torpedo kill. I mean, that's amazing. And just seeing what we're capable of and what kind of power and reach we have, because flying a plane around the globe is kind of unimpressive at this point, sadly. But a random sub in the Indian Ocean just hunting like a wolf or a sniper or something and just smoking a boat is just, it's the you know it's just amazing. There's just no other way to put it. And no, I don't care about Iranian sailors. Sorry, you signed up for the job. I don't live in Iran, so I really don't give a shit about you. So sorry, I guess I'm non-Christian, but that's fine. But anyway, yeah, I think you do have a point, though. As this stuff starts to, in 2 months when it finally gets on Facebook and all of those people actually see it, they're probably going to have a problem with it. All of the crazy people who write complaints in the complaint groups daily of people's bad driving are probably, their jaws are going to hit the ground when they see these things. I don't know that they're going to. I don't know. I think they might look through it at the lens of this is American exceptionalism, because it's going to be very unpopular. Because whether we support the war or not, the one thing we do that we haven't done or that Vietnam that's completely different than Vietnam is we support the troops. You know, it doesn't matter. We kind of understand it's not the soldiers' fault, if you will, that this war was launched. They signed up to do a job. They went and did a job that a lot of us never signed up to do and would never sign up to do. And so there's a lot of respect there. But the appetite for seeing those men and women in body bags, and I think it hits harder when it's a female soldier who gets killed. As I don't know, that might sound crazy, but I think maybe that's just me. But to see, and I don't know that any female soldier, I think one female soldier actually has been killed. But to your
Yeah,
point of they're leaning into all of the talking points that the same people who are championing this war have been calling the Daryl Coopers, the Scott Hortons, the Dave Smiths, the anybody who was saying this stuff that we're fighting wars on behalf of Israel, and then you lean into it and then you say, yeah, well, Israel is going to go, so we had to go first, or it would have led to more dead Americans. And it's like, am I hearing this correctly? Like, I kind of thought it was AI when I first heard that, or, a doctored video. No, it was not a doctored video. And I mean, how do you, how it's just, it's incredible to me. But anyway, I
So,
think
so you
we're
said,
kind of, go ahead.
I'm sorry, you said something really interesting in that I picked up on that I kind of want to expand on. When you said, when it hits the Facebook and starts kind of getting that wider normie audience, that's something I believe. I feel that a lot of us in this sphere that follow this stuff very closely, way too closely, kind of lose sight of that
Correct.
this is not as huge to a lot of the base. Really, it's not. We see the posts all day, we see the takes and whatnot, and I fully admit, for me, it's almost like kind of an hour by hour update, looking at developments, and especially when it involves our military. But for a wide swath of people, this isn't the chicken little sky is falling for them. This is they're not seeing the things that were promised. And I really wanted to talk about, you saw that post I did, the long post, the effort post on the Democrat response and what they didn't do. And I thought that your reply to that, I'll go ahead and summarize. I essentially said how the Democrats, as soon as hostilities started, not before, but as soon as they started, and this was ongoing, they didn't waste a minute to get onto the social media and post the videos of, decrying how horrible this is, or getting on the cable channel to talk about how bad this was. And there to me, that was something that really stuck out to me, because I'm going, but you had an opportunity to at least put in an Iran resolution before this. It was shut down by Schumer, but now
Right.
you put everything out. Now you show your viva la resistance. And to me, that just really pointed out how much of a uniparty system that we have at times, because they know that if they put that resolution out, that's a permanent record. That's something that's midterm fodder. If this goes, hopefully, good, it won't go perfect, obviously, but if it goes as good or good enough as what Trump wants, and we hit the midterms, that's a permanent record right there. Look, you were against the troops. You were anti-war, but what's not said in all this is the Democrats, they have the same financial donors, the same groups as well. They I really feel, my theory is that they kind of secretly we're just fully on board with this. I mean, yeah, they're going to do their political kabuki theater of crying about, oh, I can't believe you didn't take this to Congress and whatnot. Okay, when's the last time something went in front of Congress? The biggest elephant in the room, the biggest secret that nobody says out loud is Congress is ineffective. Congress is just, it's the lame horse. We play the democracy game, and this guy gets in. They don't vote on what 85% of the voters want, even when it's a nonpartisan issue like the Save Act,
Right.
showing an ID to
Right.
vote. They don't do any of that, but then they want to get up on their laurels and talk about how, oh, I can't believe this is happening. It's like, you didn't do anything. Even if you would have put if you would have put that resolution in, for all the times you're screaming about we've got to impeach Trump, well, that would be evidence right there. That would be something admissible right there, that you did that and he did this. So he went against the Congress, but they didn't. And I want to read your post, that your response, because It was great. Abdicate your constitutional responsibility, then blame the other side for doing the thing you were unwilling to say they could not do legally. Politics is nothing more than a minstrel show. And I thought that just nailed it. I'm like, yeah, it's political kabuki theater for the most part.
Yeah, they're all playing a part. They're all like playing, and it's both sides, and it just
Mm-hmm.
happens to be this side now, and it's all we're trying to get the clicks, we're trying to get the views, we're trying to be the Instagram congressperson or senator or what have you, because it doesn't take much of a memory. Even a lizard brain can go back and Trump is Hitler, Trump is a fascist. I can't believe Trump is doing this. You could just go back to the ICE stuff, and it was happening then. And then when it comes down to a congressional bill or Senate bill or anything, just a vote to say he has to get congressional approval before he goes to war in Iran. They're like, nah, no, we're good. Let
Yeah,
Hitler do what he does. And it's like,
yeah.
well, what? Like, I mean,
Well, let me
watching
give you
Ruben Gallego do his thing was just
yeah.
utterly
Let me give you
hilarious.
a better an even better example. All this stuff, regardless of what you or the audience think about it, your viewpoint on it, that's immaterial to this. But the Epstein files, just that
Yes.
comes up, and you got to hear about that all day long. Release the files, this, that, and the other. Then a vote comes up to, hey, let's release the congressional record on who's had to pay out settlements for sexual harassment, sexual assaults for interns, pages, and other DC staff. That vote was insane. It was only what was it, 30 something who said, yeah, we need to release that, and it was another, the 200
Yeah.
plus saying, well, we can't do that because that would, oh, guess what, that would maybe re reoffend, not reoffend, but harm the victims. It would make them live through the trauma again. And it was every excuse down the line why the epi files, going, well, we shouldn't release these because it'll do all this. They got released. Or even better, some of these claims may not be true from the congressional record. It may just be outlandish allegations that were recorded. Like, okay, well, we're paying all of y'all nearly 200,000 a year with all the perks and associated, things that go along with that. I think we should know if our tax dollars are being paid out for your indiscretions.
Well, we know it's being paid out for indiscretions. It's just like, what is it like? How? Why? Is it? Oh, it was a sexual harassment thing, and it's very flimsy at best. But or is it like? I mean, Michael Malice has this really good point that he will point out, and he used it um, again. What's why it's fresh in my mind in regards to the Epstein files. And he talks about Dennis Hastert and how Dennis Hastert was the longest serving Republican House uh, Speaker of the House. And then he went to prison for fucking kids, basically. And no Democrat ever speaks a word of it, ever spoke a word of it, used it as a campaign ad, used it as a, can you believe that other side did X, Y, or Z? So,
Never happened to never happened to them. They're like, oh,
yeah, I mean, why would you not run with that? I mean, that's
mm-hmm.
political gold. Unfortunately, with a whole bunch of victims, but like that's political gold. That's a political football that you can just walk across the goal line forever and ever and ever, and they never ever ever used it. And it's such a great point. And it comes to the point of the congressional payouts thing is like, is it it's repeat offenders. That's the thing. Is anybody with half a brain goes, well, this is probably like 50 of them, and it's all the same 50 doing some sort of thing. And it's just like, I see that Jake put in a comment there about Tony Gonzalez and what just happened to him,
Yeah,
and all the revelations that came out about that thing. Tony Gonzalez is tip of iceberg kind of stuff. He just happened to, really happen to get really fiery in that one, but like he's not alone. And what I think, if you think back to that, I guess it was a Senate staffer who filmed him and his boyfriend in the whatever room.
yeah.
Who
Thanks for
in the
bringing
right
that
mind
memory
would?
up.
Yeah, you're welcome first and foremost. But who in the right mind would think that that was not only like I guess I get the risk taking aspect of certain things, but to film it like, obviously, to me, you think back, they felt that person, those people felt like, oh, this is just, I mean, everybody's doing it. Why not us? Kind of thing,
Hmm.
and not to get too far off of the subject, but I mean, it is amazing that they just will constantly talk about X, Y, or Z, but never actually put their name on that thing ever. And I can kind of, I guess, understand why they wouldn't, because look no further than one Thomas Massey who pushed and pushed and pushed for the release of the Epstein files and got it. And there's no shortage of dumbasses on Twitter who will be like, look at Massey and look how corrupt he is and look at this. And it's like, I'm going to need something more than some random screenshot, because that guy's done interview after interview. He has, like a documentary, a short documentary on himself about what he does. And it's like, that guy doesn't need money. He's not there for money. He's a very pragmatic, very kind of simple guy who's obviously quite wicked smart. But to take Thomas Massey and try to tear him down because he dares not take a dollar from APAC. He dares not vote for every spending bill. He runs up against Trump from time to time, and he decided that he didn't want to be a part of a cover up of possibly involving child rape and molestation and definitely trafficking. And now we're going to tear that guy down for very righteous, benevolent things. So I can kind of understand when it comes down to voting for a war or against a war. Ron Paul's been lambasted for voting against the Iraq war up until everybody realized he was right. So, but he had to endure, what, 5, 10, 15, almost 20 years of being ridiculed for it. I mean, he got called a Jew hater for opposing the Iraq war, for God's sake. So I'm not sure how that works, but
Yeah,
yeah.
to put a bow on what we were talking about, to circle back on that, but them not get even just being able to hold a vote on, a Iran resolution to say, no, you need to go to Congress. You couldn't
Right.
do that. You acquiesced. You showed that you're in on this, even though you'll tell us how much he's a fascist and he's Mecha Hitler and all these things. At this one moment, you couldn't even just have a vote. And the excuses of what wasn't going to pass. No, no, but it puts down a record and it shows, throwing it on the table where you're at with it. And it's a lot more than just putting on a social media video or making your little appearance on The View or CNN. But those can be forgotten. Yeah, the clips will be shown again, but as you mentioned before, they don't reach everybody. So I mean, when we see these clips and stuff, especially the terminally, I'll go ahead and say it, terminally online watching it, and you're going like Tarico or any of those going, look what he said here. People don't care. Look, Jay Jones. Look what he was texting about his opponent's kids. Yeah, not everybody's paying attention to it, and they know this, and so they're just doing their theatrics. They're playing the theater kid stuff right now. And if this turns out how I myself and I hope everyone else, every other American hopes, as it turns out good and we get on with it, then they'll bask and say, well, we're glad this happened. Great. And there will be no record that they were against it, quote unquote.
Right. And that kind of, so I'll tell you one of the things that I kind of struggle with in this whole deal of like justification for attacking Iran. You have and this is one of the other talking points that are out there about Iran is a sponsor of terror around the region and around the globe or what have you. But it's very dubious to me of how we get there, or how one gets there and says Iran is backing all of these terror groups, because you could flip that around. And I guess it's because most people don't really understand that when you're the country who helped create Al Qaeda and the Sunni terrorists that operate within the Middle East, I guess we should probably break it down, not to assume that everyone in this listening understands that the Iranians are Shiite, majority Shiite, and the like Saudis are Sunnis, and they're not friends. Let's just put it that way. But when the United States and our allies are the biggest sponsor of the Sunni militant groups, who then cause problems for the Shiites, whether that's in Iraq, whether that's in Afghanistan, wherever that is. I understand wanting to hold the United States in some sort of benevolent kind of view that we're the good guys, so we're training up the other good guys, or shit happens or things like that. But if you look at it from the Iran perspective, you have these people that say, well, Iran's been at war with the United States since 1979. That's a flat out lie. But if we take that at face value and say that that is correct, well, Iran looks at it and goes, well, the United States has been at war with us for 47 years. So we've been propping up these groups to create some sort of buffer, and we don't always we can't always coordinate what these groups do. So when they talk about, the bombings in Beirut and Lebanon, and one of the ones that really bothers me is the EFPs that popped up in Iraq, the explosive form penetrators, and they say, well, Iran supplied those to the Iraqis. And it's like, no, that's not really accurate. First and foremost, the Iraqis figured out how to make them because it's really easy to make, and they were making them in Iraq. And they say, well, they showed them how to do it. Okay, I guess I can kind of get there, but that's like blaming the Soviets for every AK that's used to kill a Western life. I mean, it's dubious at best. I guess you could make that leap, but I'm not there to make that leap. But this whole Iran is sponsoring terrorism around the area in the Middle East. I maybe you disagree with me on that, but I'm not making that leap, if that makes sense.
No, I hear you, and I don't even want to call this a bit of a pushback, even though it's just kind of my counter to it. And I'd really like to name drop a really good account on here. He does long threads. He was an analyst in the region for a long time, American JT Alexander. He has a lot of really good threads. And I'm not saying you're going to agree with everything, but it really, he concisely puts in the timelines and a lot of the machinations behind this. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I automatically think of this film is dedicated to the brave Mujahideens who fought against, in Afghanistan. It's like, yeah, yeah, agree entirely. The sausage is ugly. How we make it there, and you can't exactly say, well, that's why they're doing this, and because that's just the way it is in that region in a sense. But I do remember I was in the Straits of Hormuz over 20 plus years ago, and this memory is burned in my mind because I'll never forget. We were woken up, and we had basically an all hands meeting, and they were informing us on how we were going to have to double up our security watches and a lot more, our force protection. Everything was getting upped practically to the max, and it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? This was roughly January '02, that time frame. And you know what we found out, Rudy? We found out that George W. Bush had decided in his state address while we were roughly 10 miles off the coast of Iran in the Straits of Hormuz to say, our new axis of evil is Iraq, Iran, and North Korea. And it's like, thanks, dude. Didn't get no sit reps on that. No heads up. Like, hey, by the way, the president of the United States right now, months after 9/11, is about to call out this country that you're floating next to and constantly passing over and over and seeing their, their gunships. I just looking back on it, I just see the hilarity and absurdity of it. Like, what are we doing? Why are you putting this out into the world? Basically, just poking the bear, poking the hornet's nest there. But my take on the Iran, they do sponsor terrorism. But what has happened with that is, at this point, Iran is the regional stepchild, geopolitically and economically speaking. Whether one asks Saudi Arabia, the UAE members, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt, and yes, of course, Israel, there's no more runway left for them. And the realpolitik answer at this point is, well, their dismantlement and destruction. Because we got to remember, too, and this will probably get me in trouble because I'm not going hard enough on Neti Pot and the Lukids and everybody else, but Israel's not the only influencer of American policy. You look back even to Sam Francis writings in the early 90s, and he discussed how hundreds of millions of dollars from Saudi Arabia was getting pumped into Texas banks, for crying out loud. So there's a lot of players in that region. There's a lot of money, there's a lot of influence, and at a certain extent, I chalk this down to Many in denial that we are still the global American empire, and there are burdens of empire. So when regional vassals, client states, and those that have more influence, in my opinion, than they should at all, when they speak and when they want something done, those things are going to happen. We have to recall last year, Trump had that flurry of visits across the Middle East. You remember that, Rudy, where he was meeting with MBS and meeting
Yeah.
with all the leaders and you know celebrating, saying trillions of investments are coming from this country and they've pledged this and they've pledged that. Oh, they did, but the unsaid agreements. My theory of mind is Iran has to go. Iran is a thorn in our side over here. And they kind of really proved that once hostilities began, because it wasn't just Doha, it wasn't just Bahrain, it wasn't just Kuwait. They're shooting at Dubai. They're shooting just everywhere they can, just lashing out all over the place. And that was a bit surprising. It's like, well, why wouldn't you save these? I mean, obviously hitting Israel too and stuff, but why aren't you saving these missiles for our forces specifically, the places that would have the most sustainment of damage and maybe actually do something? But you're just throwing it out at everybody, and that was a bit surprising. And also to mention the fact that I said when we began of things that didn't happen. That's been a big surprise. What hasn't happened? Because we've been told forever that, well, we get in hostilities with Iran. There's going to be a rush to defense from China and Russia and these other players. They're going to step in, and this is going to happen. They're immediately going to come to help. Now, yeah, you've got your various factions, the Hezbollah and the others that are doing some stuff, but kind of a non-factor. We can, I mean, we can complain about Israel's actions in Lebanon and whatnot, but it does seem to be that they had kind of prepared for any non-actors coming out, or nobody on the main stage coming out on that. But the other thing too is I've heard forever, even when I was on the water, of the threat of the hypersonics. The hypersonics, they're going to take out. It's a death blow to our carriers. It's going to be a death blow to any surface vessels.
Right.
Well, my only question, just trying to think it through the logic chain. Okay, this is supposedly is existential life or death battle for this regime. Well, even though once again online people pointing stuff like, look at this, the carriers right there. Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. It's 4.5, over 4 acres of sovereign U.S. territory. You don't hide a carrier. It's not meant to be hid. It's gunboat diplomacy. They want you to know they're there,
Right.
but that means that they should be able to be targeted if they had the hypersonics. The other thing too, we were told about how, well, the drones are gonna, just do a swarm tactic, and that'll take out, military assets such as the carrier, or it could take out the destroyers and everything else we have there. And yes, there has been, of course, drones utilized. One of them hit one of the big radar spots there in, I think Doha, I believe, and Bahrain. So yeah, they have been effective. However, we're not seeing any of our ships sinking. We're not seeing any actual sustained damage on that. And back to the online age we live in, where you have all these people coming out as supposed experts, or look at this, posted this just happened. No, no. I am by no means up in the high echelons of all the knowledge, but in my position in life, I would know if the carriers were getting hit. I would know if we had, 1,000 casualties at this moment. So there's just so much misinformation out there for, as you pointed out earlier, for clicks and for the clout and people trying to pretend that they're authorities on stuff. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I'm the big brain here on this stuff, but it's just I'm seeing just the false information constantly, and it's being utilized to shift the narrative dynamics on other parts of this conflict. And well, finally, for all the talk of the Straits of Hormuz as its choke point, and that they would put all these mines in and they would block it off. Well, yeah, if they were going to do that, then your best bet is to hit a couple of tankers, sink them in the middle of it, gum up the works. Haven't seen that yet. We just saw that Trump just took the U.S. is taking over from the Lloyds of London. We are going to be insuring the ships and also, you know, doing the patrols to protect them. And so there's a lot of big moving parts here of stuff that I'm really surprised to see, and then things that I was told I would see, and we're not seeing. And I'm very proud of the. You've heard of the Helios system, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, for the audience and everyone else, Helios system is the direct energy, the laser wonder weapon, which I will fully admit that's not in my wheelhouse, but or my sphere. But I have contacts there, and they've talked forever about, dude, this is the real deal. This is some good stuff. It knocks it out. It's not a Sea Whiz, which Sea Whiz is pretty much super machine gun up on the ships, but this thing takes them out. And I was happy to see some of it in action and going, well, thank God at least some of those trillions we spent on this defense actually work.
Yeah, it's the hypersonics thing. I've heard we all hear about the hypersonics, and I've heard from what are somewhat reliable sources, I guess, whatever that means at this day and age, that the Chinese are on the ground showing, they have some of their hypersonics, and they're doing kind of technical data support or whatever it is, technical support. But I also look at that and I say, okay, let's assume that's accurate, that the Chinese are on the ground and they're giving support and they've brought over some hypersonics to the Iranians. The Chinese are very calculating folks, if no one's ever noticed. So I don't know why you would bring it over if you weren't going to let them use it, but I think the Chinese also understand that we know if Iran fires a hypersonic, probably where it came from, and we're going to be kind of mad if our carrier is at the bottom of the sea. But also, there are things that are happening that are bigger picture as well. And what I mean by that is I heard an interview, I think it was Neftali Bennett, a few months back. I believe that's who it was. It was a former one-term prime minister of Israel. And he made the statement in that interview I was watching, or whoever it was, I'm pretty sure it was him, that the state of Israel, the two states of Israel that existed before, only lasted 80 years. Well, we're 2 years away from the 80th anniversary of the current state of Israel, the current Jewish state. So that keeps just sticking in the back of my mind with when you go into hostilities like this. This is kind of a regional war. As you pointed out, the Iranians have been firing at everybody at this point. They're targeting oil fields, they're targeting oil refineries, they're targeting ships in the Strait of Hormuz. So they are kind of taking on everyone, firing everything out there. That kind of obviously concerns me. I think it helps. I think it's undermining our standing in the region. If you're the Qataris, if you're the Bahrainians, whomever, I would assume, and this could have been part of Trump's Middle East tour previously, kind of smoothing them over and kind of, I guess, telling them what to expect if this whole thing kicked off, and to expect this to happen, so that maybe they're braced for it. But I would think that if I'm Saudi Arabia or one of these Gulf states, and I've allowed the United States to have bases of different disciplines on my soil, that kind of that benefit was I have built-in protection by the world's preeminent superpower. And although cities are not being destroyed and leveled, and mass casualty events are not happening from what I understand, I mean, it could be, but that hasn't been reported yet, you're still suffering some damage and you're still getting black eyes and you still don't like it. And the thing is, as I pointed out before, most of these are Sunni countries and the Shiites are black in their eyes, and these guys really don't like that shit. And so that leads into the other part of, the Ayatollah. Again, most people don't understand this, that there's another Ayatollah in southeastern Iraq who's running that. How'd that work out for us? But the Ayatollah, in taking him out, this is a religious leader. I don't necessarily understand the machinations of Shiite Muslim and the Shiite belief, but this guy meant a lot to a lot of people. Is he Pope level? Possibly. I don't really know. But the thing I do know in regards to the Shiites versus the Catholics, the Shiites are willing to take up arms and do things in a very violent way all over the globe. So that when they start talking about fatwas and a global fatwa against the West and Israel and the great Satan that we are in their eyes, that really starts to, when you mix that with the open border of the last 4 years, if you take the Sarah Adamses of the world who have told us that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 trained fighters in the United States, that's concerning at the very least. And does this, so if we can contain the country of Iran, that doesn't necessarily mean we can contain the Shiites of the world wherever they may be. So that's probably my biggest concern of this whole deal is containment within our own borders. I'm curious what your thoughts on that are.
Okay, before that, I wanted to touch on two things you brought up there because it was really
Sure.
interesting. First, when you talked about China, and it really stuck out when you said how calculating they are, because that is true. Because that has been one of the big questions of, well, they get so much of their oil from Iran. Shouldn't they be up in arms with this? Shouldn't they be doing more? But they are calculating. They are looking at what is best for us right now, and it certainly isn't, putting Chinese troops down in Iran or giving them the hypersonics if they, as one of the comments says, keyword in hypersonic is hype. Yeah. So even
Right.
if they are out there or not. So yeah, they're sitting back and look at how they dealt. They were in Venezuela. The delegation of them were in Venezuela. Basically, hey, when are we going to see Maduro? And I could just imagine the Venezuelan spokesman, coming over like, he don't work here no more. And they went home. And it was like, okay, they dealt with that. And now they're seeing this. And as you brought up, the bigger picture of this, it does seem to be, people may not like it or not, but as an American empire, the burden of empire, it does seem to be these are some big stage global moves. Venezuela getting that back under control, Iran getting that taken care of because of the regional aspect of it. But to your other point, where you're talking about the bases, we have bases in Bahrain, Qatar, and other unnamed places, but people can find them. I'm not going to start saying every spot, but
Right.
we had translators from Bahrain on our deployments. And at the time, we were doing what was considered, actually, I have an essay on my Substack about it. It's my time as an underpaid ExxonMobil employee because we were defending the oil off the coast of
Right.
Iraq there, K-Bot, A-Bot, the terminals. So we had the translators there with us for the visit board search Caesar teams to talk to whoever we had to talk to. And I had him, I did have some chances to talk with him, just on a one-on-one and just, ask the questions, actually talk to the people there, and I asked him straight up, it's like, hey, so what do your friends think about you working with us? And he goes, most are okay with it. Some, they have their disagreements. And I learned that his father worked in the Bahraini kingdom there. He had a pretty high position as an official, and uh, he explained it out kind of as you did that, well, if the Americans weren't here, someone else would be here. So it does give us security. It does give us the coverage of the American empire being under the Americans. Because once again, everyone wants to look at this stuff, a half inch deep and just on the surface level, not understanding the region, not understanding the cultures, not understanding their customs and ways that, just a little over 100 plus years ago, these were Bedouin tribes. These were all tribes. You had your patriarchs. Saudi Arabia, the House of Saud. Essentially, they show up after when it was decided, and that was the biggest, baddest, meanest group. They were the ones in charge. That's how it goes. So when you see these places over there, underneath all the glitz and glamour, there is that American hegemon protection. And I still go back to my original point that on the bigger picture of this, even with the messaging bad and the theories of too much influence from one group or another, that these are big power moves, and that's why you kind of see full speed ahead with Trump and whatnot. And don't get that wrong as if I'm saying I'm in total agreement that I'm happy that everything's happening. No, but I'm just trying to look at this from a balanced perspective of why it's happening, just in a neutral way there, or how will this be good? Because we still haven't gotten to some of the questions that have not been answered at all whatsoever. But your question to that of can you repeat it again? I'm sorry. About the
Just
Shiites
the
and Sunnis, like what could happen.
well, just the broader, this may not be contained to the borders of Iran, basically.
Oh, yeah, okay. And you were talking about how the Ayatollah possibly being looked at as the Pope.
Yes.
This is this is straight opinion. I'm not a the cultural expert on this, but what's been put forth on that is the love of the Ayatollah. I mean, we got to remember, what was it, 1979? Fall of the Shah, 40, nearly 50
Mm-hmm.
years ago. And when you look at the average age in, say, Iran and whatnot, it's a very young generation. And almost in a way, you kind of, this full love and devotion for the Ayatollah and whatnot, it's kind of like a boomer Iranian thing in a way. You know what I mean? I mean, the technology has changed. The world is a much more visible place to them. Uh, I mean, hell, I had a doctor down the street. He was a spinal doctor. He was from Tehran, and he was a fairly young guy. And talking with him, like I said, this is anecdotal, but talking with him, and he goes, "Yeah, we're ready for some change." Now, does that mean, of course, is it going to be clean and nice? No, probably messy as usual, like every single other time we try to fix something. No denying that. But this idea that everyone in Iran is ready to die for the Ayatollah. Oh, he's gone. Okay, well, 2 hours later, we have a new Ayatollah. Shit, he's gone now too. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
expectations have kind of been, at least to me, in just 7 days, have been shattered. Really, of what I had expected to happen.
Yeah. And that whole thing of the Iranian people want change. Well, which Iranian people are we talking about? Are we talking about the Shiites? Are we talking about the Persians? Are we talking about the Baluchs? Which ones are we talking about? Because those are three distinct, sizable economic or sizable ethnicities within the borders of Iran. This whole thing of one of the things I talked about last week was how pissed off I am about all of these goddamn foreigners that are either here in England who talk about how we need to Iran needs regime change. Like, then go fight and die, dude. Don't sit there in London with your little TV show in your stupid name telling everybody in England how they need to, or the in Great Britain, how they need to send their sons and daughters to go fight and die for your shithole country that you fled because you're a coward. And it's the same thing with what people don't want to talk about with the Shah and his clown of I guess what we're talking about now is the grandson and son of the Shah who got deposed. Is, first of all, that guy is an absolute clown as well. The people of Iran, by Marco Rubio's own admission, he has no support within Iran. The other part is the people of Iran in 1979 threw his father, the Shah, out. They had a revolution and they threw him out. He was a murderous bastard himself. Why people don't understand that and can't wrap their head around that was he was less murderous than his father, but he was still a murderous bastard. And I mentioned that on Twitter earlier this week, and someone said, well, he stopped shooting people. That's why he was overthrown. Man, do you hear yourself? Like, I mean, it's just, and that goes back to the whole 50,000 people killed. What is actually happening? And okay, so this is going to get to a bigger thing too of, we all hear about the Kurds, the poor Kurds, the Kurds, the Kurds, the Kurds. The Kurds always get screwed. They got screwed in Iraq twice, or if not three times. They got gassed in Iraq. They did this, they did that. Well, here's the thing about the Kurds, and apparently there's some reporting that the Kurds are going into Iran from Iraq to fight on the ground. And I heard also that there may be a southern form of the Kurds coming up. The Kurds are a bunch of fucking communists. So let's start there. And the Kurds are hated by the Turks. And the Turks are much more powerful than the Kurds. The idea that the Kurds are going to do anything for us in Iran is laughable at best. And that's where a lot of these overinflated death counts came from that are supposedly civilians. Is you had the PJAKs and the PKK and other Kurdish rebel groups probably propped up by us, Mossad, British intelligence, what have you. Um, when those protests took place, they started going in and killing. I guess they have unarmed security slash police officers in Iran, and they went in and just started killing those guys and got into pitched battles with Iranian security forces. Both are armed, so this is mutual combat. Hope everybody has fun kind of combat. And what you're going to get by getting the Kurds involved is, one, you're going to get a Turkish response, but two, everyone's now scattered in the wind, and you now basically have like Shiistan, Persia, Baluchistan. And what I notice about all of these people telling us how we need to spend our lives and our gold over there liberating their shithole country that they fled tend to be the actual Persian or Persian descent, who are probably the weakest people of all, but probably the best people to a man, like, character wise, but they're the weakest people of all. So what you're going to get, if this whole thing descends into some sort of may the strongest man win, is you're going to get a lot of dead Persians, and you're going to get alliances with like Baluchistan and probably the Taliban in Afghanistan fighting against Pakistan. And this thing is probably going to spill outside the borders, but hey, at least we got rid of the regime, I guess.
One of the funniest descriptions of the Kurds I ever heard, they're like, yeah, they're basically the gypsies of the Arab world. I'm like, yeah, that kind of tracks, actually. That fits really good.
That is dead on.
Yeah. But I mean, that's a good segue into $1 trillion questions here. Who will run Iran? How will this be accomplished without occupying and controlling a nation of 90 plus million people? And how, if they do this, I heard talk of partitioning the country somehow. I mean, are we talking about some sort of, Cold War era, Berlin Wall thing? These are the questions that are not getting answered. And as you point out, we're not getting anything from that, though. We're getting a lot of promises and whatnot. But on the flip side of that too is this fear of it turning into the forever war slog, year on end happening. We're still not seeing those moves. And as I pointed out earlier, we're on
True.
day seven of this, and I chalk it up to just the age we live in with the technology. People watching 14-second TikToks, sound bites on YouTube. I mean, seriously, how many people even read anymore? Oh, whoa, this is over 4 pages long. I can't read this. What's this called? A book? So the attention span and the need to see something happen, or this all these outrageous claims of what it's going to happen when we don't know yet, the unknown unknowns. I mean, you know as well as I do, Rudy, just from research, that you can't just take 150,000 troops of any country logistically and get them over there in a week. I mean, when you look back
No.
to Iraq, the build up to that was months upon months upon months of getting, staging areas into Kuwait, staging areas into the other countries to go into Iraq. So, yeah, okay, we got some carriers over there. We got subs. We've got our B2s. We have our, it's an air war right now. But even if tomorrow, God forbid, they make that decision, that's not happening. It's not going to happen overnight, and it's not going to happen for months either. And so, what fills in that? Because right now it's a bit of a power vacuum there. Now, of course, there's things that we don't know going on behind the scenes, but going back to the messaging is atrocious on all of this. And I think that's a part of partly for subterfuge, just to kind of disguise things, maybe the real reasons. And of course, we have plenty of theories on that. But on the other hand, it does seem like there is a plan. And no, I'm not even getting into the I'm trusting the plan. That is, do not misunderstand me. I'm just saying that it appears that they have a plan and they're following it at this point, what they're doing. But it's not good knowing like where you think this is going to end up, or any actual what is our achievement goals here? What are we doing? From every single military doctrine, of course, the successful ones. What happens next? If you can't answer that, then we're still in that quasi confusion stage, and that's where I think a lot of bad actors come in and start filling in the blanks. as we said before, for the clicks, for the attention, for the engagement, and just to be heard, because everybody has a voice on here nowadays, but not everyone has a point.
Yeah, the question now, to give Trump and the administration a little bit of credit in this deal, at any time they can just stop and go home because we're not committed on the ground. There is no ground invasion. There is no flank, if you will. You can just turn the boat and go home. Um, but that said, there is that ever lingering question, and it's part of this episode's title is now what? Because okay, you took out, we're on Ayatollah number 3 or something. Okay, um, if you get, let's say there's 100-person target list, whatever the number is, and you get all 100 people, is that it? Do we go home and it's like every man for themselves? Hope everybody has fun in Iran. Like, is there a humanitarian mission attached to this? I think where we are going to go incredibly wrong, and it's a great point that it takes, months to do it, is any sort of ground force. Once you start doing the ground, and also I think you'll probably agree with this, there are people on the ground right now in Iran, some sort of,
Yes, yes,
special forces type people,
100%
obviously.
CIA,
That's not who we're
Mossad.
talking about.
Yeah,
Sure.
they're all there.
Delta,
They're
Green
all there.
Berets, SEALs.
Hmm.
Name the organization. There are Americans on the ground. We're not foolish in that regard. But um, committing the 82nd Airborne, a full blown. We're storming the airfields. We're securing airfields, and we're doing all that. That's a completely different animal, because the small groups that you have there now can get out fairly quickly, get out of town, all of that.
Well, and
Once you commit the full on ground forces, that's when the calculus changes. Go ahead.
except for maybe like three people like Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham, and Holden Bloodfest, everyone knows you cannot invade Iran. You cannot. I'm sure plenty of people have seen the videos of the models, of the simulations of how are you going to do this, because I'm sure you've heard the joke, Rudy. The God made the mountains that way to keep the people in. It is not Iraq. It is not flat. It's worse than Afghanistan. There's just I can't see it. There's just no way, unless God forbid. Okay, well, World War III and it's over. I mean, final fatality. We're done, because it's just there is no way to put lipstick on that pig and try to convince it. And even your most ardent MAGA, I mean, trust the plan, Jesus picked Trump stuff. I mean, even they would have to be like, how are we going to do this? Wait a minute. And so yeah, I just cannot even see any ideas of a ground invasion at all. With,
I
as you
don't
said,
agree that even the most fervent MAGA supporters would even question. They would just think, well, we did it in World War II, we'll do it again. Like everything is fucking World War II with these people.
yeah, you have those. I agree. I concede that there will be those, but I can't. I don't know if you could really bring enough people on the side for that. And it's not like we haven't, knock on wood, we haven't had another incident of like a 9/11 and it's been traced back to Iran or something. This is simply the the oil triangle and bringing in and out the food and all of this is a maritime issue. Yeah, I'm sure they've already plotted out where they want to put the next Exxon Mobil building in Tehran or something eventually. But at the same time, it just doesn't feel like you could rally up enough existential things, unless God forbid false flags or a tripwire, something getting set up. I laughed when that I always say his last name wrong, but he pretty much lives on the podcast circuits nowadays. The CIA, John Karaku, you've heard of him?
Yeah,
Yeah.
karaoke.
Did you see his misstep? Where
I
he says
haven't.
the aircraft carrier has 25,000 sailors, and when it gets sunk, there's going to be questions. And I'm sure he misspoke. I'm sure he knows there's not 25,000 sailors on a carrier. And
Well,
for everyone out there,
pack
it's
boat.
with a full complement when you have the entire air wing and of course, the ship's company. It's roughly around 5,000, but not 25,000 people. No, but Yeah, that's what I fear. Like really a false flag or some sort of maneuvering to get us into this. God forbid, 2026 USS Liberty style attack. Who knows? But
I do have to give kudos to the Trump administration again in that they, although it sounds ridiculous a little bit when Rubio and others have said that, well, we went because Israel is going to go and they, what have you, and we knew that if we waited, then Iran was going to attack us, blah blah blah. And there's so many people, respectable people, and very skeptical people, and very smart people who have said, well, why wouldn't you just let them attack? And then you have all of that. It's like, well, why would you do that? If you knew they were going to attack, let's assume that they knew for a fact that Iran was going to attack and they did it first. At least, and here's my kudos, at least they didn't do some sort of like bait or false flag, some, Roosevelt style, let's put all the boats in one area and let's see what happens kind of thing. Like, no, they said, fuck this, we're going first. So I at least have to kind of tip my cap to them in that aspect, that at least, the propaganda for this war was really, really bad and really, really obviously fake and all of those things. So although I don't like this war, I don't think we should be in this war, I don't necessarily feel like we're being lied to necessarily. We're just kind of in the dark. And
yes,
there can be very good reasons for keeping us in the dark. Much like, so we talked about Congress and them abdicating their responsibility. I
hmm
also have this other part of me where if I'm Donald Trump and the Trump administration and all of the generals and the cabinet and all of those guys, I look at Congress and I say, they can't even pass a voter ID bill that has majority support from the popular, from
over
the
80
populace.
percent, over 80
They
percent
can't.
bipartisan.
Sure, they can't do that. What are the odds of us getting, first of all, the war guarantee or approval, but second of all, that would include some sort of like, discovery, if you will, where you have to give out battle plans or maybe the scope of it. Basically, you're going to have to tell Congress what you plan on doing, and those idiots are going to tell somebody. So if I'm the Trump administration, obviously I don't want them to vote on it, but I just need to go because I don't need these fools getting in the way. They can't even pass a bill that has a majority support within the American public, and any argument against it is based on nonsense. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn on the whole thing of like, well, these idiots can't do it anyway, so we might as well, The one thing you can say about a Trump administration, like it or not, he is going to do things and he's going to do them at a rapid pace.
Well, and one thing too, and I got to fall back on the theories that I kind of put the most stock into is this is once again the burden of empire that Iran has
Sure.
been, a thorn in the side of Saudi Arabia, the rest of the countries, including Israel, and this was kind of the perfect time. There was a post about it was from a couple of months ago, really good account where he says the scary thing is that this is the best time for conflict because of the low oil prices, and we already know that they've been stocking up on oil. They've been preparing for this stuff. So once again, there's been a plan. This has been in play for a while. And as you point out,
Right.
Trump is like, okay, well, I can be an emperor across the world, and then I'm a small town mayor at home right now with these domestic policies, which is insane. We cannot deport that what's that Albrego Garcia guy. We can't get
Right.
him out of our country, but we can go take over an entire other country. And I think that's where partly where a lot of the frustration does come from folks on our side and all sides really of looking at what do we have here right now? At the old trope of, oh, a federal judge in Hawaii just ruled that, yeah, he can't be president. That joke of how it's going. And so uh, this might have been just another. I mean, also with the regional concerns, this might have been sometimes you just do things to send a message. So, and it was
Sure.
planned. But I still,
Yeah, I
I have to
good.
fall back on the regional issues and uh, hedging against future Chinese oil supplies on that as the biggest things. I just can't see, as you said, yeah, we could have allowed a Cassius Belli, let Israel do their thing, then God forbid let one of our bases basically get hit undetected, no warning, bye bye Bahrain, bye bye many other spots, or some damage, and then be like, look what they did, here we go. And that would have been the easiest thing if that was the intention. So this one, on how it's going through on day 7, once again, we are on day 7, folks. Yeah,
Right.
takes longer to cure something in the pot sometimes. But yeah, it's I think we're still just in that wait and see period. There's going to be a lot of theories and ideas on how it's going to go, but I'm going to be really surprised if we're even still talking about this. This is my most positive prediction. In 6 months, this is going to be, yeah, Iran's doing this now, and look what Trump did, and midterms are looking good, and the Save Act got passed. I mean, there you go. There's my sunny, put it out in the universe.
That's quite sunny, I will say. Quite rosy cheeked, I would say, on that one. I do, if we take the bigger picture here in the future vision of this is a move against the Chinese and their expansion, and this is also kind of a move against the Russians and kind of putting them in their place, if you will, because we already took Syria off the map for them, and I'm pretty sure that they don't have access to that naval base anymore that they had in Syria for decades. Their jumping off point to the Mediterranean. And if we're just corralling the Chinese in, sending a message to the Russians, then this, globally, strategically, this is a baller move, especially when you mix it in with Venezuela and doing the regime change there. I do have a lot more faith in the people in charge with this administration than I've had in any administration since W. Bush, because they were as inept as it gets on how to wage a war. There was never any clear goal. It was almost like, let's just war everybody, let's just blow everything up, and let's see what happens. And then Obama was just as bad. But
Mm-hmm.
you can take a guy like Pete Hegseth, and there's any number of things that you can say about Hegseth, but when he's coming out talking about, we're at war, that's an Iranian ship, yeah, it was in the Indian Ocean, but we're still blowing it up because we're at war with them, and we are going to be lethal, and we're going to be relentless, and that's what we're doing. We're here to kill people. Sorry, but that's what we're doing. That is a much different thing than our rules of engagement are this. And that's another thing, if you go to Congress asking for permission, then they have all of these stipulations on what you can and cannot do. And we all know how that doesn't work out, from Vietnam up through the GWAT of, can I shoot this guy or can't I shoot that guy? I have to radio, I have to do this, I have to do that. Whereas it feels like, and I don't know this for fact, but if you have like an F-22 or F-35 pilot or whomever, any fighter pilot who's just cruising around and they see an enemy target and an enemy fighter, I think it's on site. They just light them up if they can. And I kind of like that idea of like actually letting the war fighters do the war fighting, not calling back to some central command and asking for permission to blow up an enemy plane before it can get gone or something like that. Same thing with the naval engagement. So I do actually, again, have to tip my cap in that aspect.
And you bring a good point with that one as well. That this is sending a message. They are seeing capabilities from us. 35 shot down at first air to air kill. The submarine even taking out the warship. Granted, it was an Iranian warship. It wasn't your latest and greatest model or whatnot, but we are moving at will. We are doing what we want to do. We don't have 100,000 plus troops over there, staged, ready to go. And so far, knock on wood, I still don't see that
Right.
being necessary. That doesn't discount the questions that have not been answered, but I still have to hedge back to, we're on day 7. This is a evolving
Right.
situation, and I think that many people on many sides are too used to. Remember the old joke when we were kids, how things get wrapped up in a sitcom. 24 minutes, everything's done. And now we're to the point, well, everything should be wrapped up in a TikTok video. It's done. And they're just searching out for certain, sources of information. And there's just, I hate to use the word, but so much misinformation out there and grifting on it. I just saw the other day that people are watching that, what, Professor Chang, or I can't remember, Zhang, whatever. And then he found out he's not like a historian or anything, he has a BA and whatnot, but he's been putting out these videos about this is what China will do. Iran is going to destroy America. And people are watching this and posting and commenting, going, he's so right. And I'm not seeing the proof of that so far. I don't think I'm going to see proof of that. As we talked about earlier, the things that I expected to see, I feared to see, none of that has come forth so far. Nothing has happened that has been promised to be happen for so long by all the experts. Hypersonic missiles and 10 tankers with billions of oil, in the straits at the bottom. It's not happening right now. Doesn't mean everything's going right. Obviously,
let's.
But
Sure, it's war, right?
yeah.
But let's think about this. Let's just hypothetical. Let's say a hypersonic missile is fired, and we have an aircraft carrier at the bottom of an ocean. What is the move next if you're the Trump administration or the Department of War?
And that missile has been proven to be launched from Iranian.
Yeah, let's say it comes out of Tehran. It's obvious. It's pure cut dry. It's a Chinese missile fired by the Iranians. Bang. Let's
5,000 American boys and girls go to the bottom.
Yeah, all the hardware goes to the bottom.
I'm just going to tell you. People will talk about a place called Iran. They'll speak of it as if it was, hey, you remember that country, Iran? Yeah, that's my firm conviction. If
is that you personally, or is that you what you think the administration would do?
I think any administration would do it, even Obama.
Do you think nuclear, like, it's just over?
No, I mean, hey, it's hypothetical, possibly, but
it's on the table, though, right? Neither of us can rule it out.
But
right.
I mean, I think every single B-52 that we have, every single B-2, B-1, you would see, cliched, but like Gladiator, at my signal, unleash hell. Like you're done. You're done.
It would be the real, actual shock and awe that we were promised in Iraq. We would actually see it this time, basically.
Yeah, they wouldn't just be blowing up transformer stations and and power stations and the water department. No, that would. I fully believe that they would just be wiped off the map.
That's my ultimate fear, is that something, a hypersonic, a whatever, a lucky shot, whatever it is, and they drop an aircraft carrier, which is very, very difficult to do, to sink an aircraft carrier. But, just hypothetical worst case scenario, they do drop an aircraft carrier into the drink. You can't just go, oh shit, we better get out of here. I mean, you have to, the everything changes, everything gets ratcheted up, to which both of us cannot rule out a nuclear strike. No. Neither of us sat there and went, oh no, absolutely not. We both just went, I think we're both in the same spot of like, I mean, it wouldn't shock me if they did. So in that scenario, that changes everything too, because, okay, if you're Russia, or even possibly the Chinese, but certainly if you're the Russians, well, I'm fucking up Ukraine because you did it, or whatever. Like, I mean, these are the things that keep me awake at night sometimes, or give me like the chills randomly in the middle of the day when I'm thinking about this, because you don't have to be good. You just have to be lucky sometimes, and it changes everything. When the bullets start, this is the whole thing where, a lot of the people I listened to, and this was my view as well back in the June strikes, was you don't know where this goes, because you can say it's all about the nuclear facilities until some S-400 hits the right place, or not right place and sinks a boat or takes down, kills an American airman or five, and now everything changes because you can't control what the other side does. And I don't see that. I don't know how in what high regard I hold the Iranian military, but I I don't really see, obviously they're responding, but I thought it would be quite a bit more. So I don't know if they're just their capabilities are exaggerated or if they're just kind of holding back, waiting for a certain moment. I really don't know.
Yeah, and that's where it comes back to a lot of our assumptions and hypotheticals to me that I had for the longest time for that region of what they would do, what they wouldn't do, even in this short time frame of 7 days. Not seeing why didn't they have whatever dead man switch? Ayatollah's gone. Okay, then the whatever signal goes out, launch everything, either at Israel and then every single base we have, and maybe any of our assets there, the carriers, if they have the hypersonics, like okay, that wasn't done. That's not been noted enough and remarked upon. Like okay, so before we freak out over what this could become, let's look at what hasn't happened again. I mean, Iran shot at Azerbaijan. What'd they do? you know, just all over the place. And I just keep hammering back to my point of the bigger picture is that the entire region was tired of them. Yes, of course, Israel was tired of them, but Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Jordan, Egypt. I mean, just their time had come, and this was just the timing of it. I think that there were discussions made when Trump came through the Middle East and talked to everybody, and supposedly got all these wonderful investments into the country, and that was kind of the unspoken deal. Like, yeah, that day is coming. And what we also didn't see is, as you pointed out, we're not seeing the I always get it wrong. The big Russian bombers, those SUs or whatever. We're not seeing them like level Kiev. It's not Kiev. It's Kiev. And we
Right.
also aren't seeing any movements made. The Chinese haven't taken out a bunch of, not even Taiwan, like around the Philippines. They have their distortions. And you're not seeing more aggressiveness between India and China or India and Pakistan. A lot of things didn't kick off that had been promised for a long time by the geopolitical experts. Like this is what will
Sure.
happen. This will be the tripwire for this. It's not happening. So yeah, my big brain theory assumption is more people were in the know on this. This was discussed a lot more on the global stage amongst the powers. Like this is how this is going to go, and I hope
Yeah,
I'm right
and
about that.
I mean, time will tell, obviously. But yeah, you look at Iran versus Saudi Arabia. I don't know what Saudi Arabia was like in 1979, nor do I actually know what Iran was like in 1979, but they had a revolution. And from 1979 till now, Saudi Arabia, other Gulf states have become, I don't know that Saudi Arabia necessarily falls in this, but they've become kind of tourist destinations to an extent. They've become places that are welcoming to Westerners into the United States. These are not the head choppers of old. These are not the throat slitters of yesteryear. These are very wealthy, rich, kind of liberalizing, if you will, countries that are, they still have deep Islamic roots and beliefs and sites, especially in Saudi Arabia, and they have a way of life and a culture that they're holding on to, and they should. But it's softening to an extent, and Iran has never softened. They've never come online. They've never made that attempt. So to your point, which you've made a few times, and it's a great point of, you know, the, the neighbors are just tired of them. Like, do we really need this goddamn headache that's over there that's doing these things? That's, you know, they're doing the same things within the Sunni countries that they're doing, in other places, of propping up separatist groups or rebel groups, or creating some sort of strife within Saudi or Qatar, or wherever. you know and Yemen's a failed state at this point, for various reasons. But it's just, if you're Saudi, Yemen's right there. You share a border with them. They're on the peninsula with you. You're probably just tired of this shit, you know. And I can understand that view, and I can understand where you just reach your breaking point, and it's like, look, this is a very short term pain for a very long term gain. If we have to eat a few missiles, we don't want to, but we're willing to do it if so long as it means Iran is just not the thorn in the side anymore. So yeah.
And I know this is a recorded line, so I can't believe I'm saying this on a recorded line, but as you stated, the westernization, um, one of the very very few benefits of globalization is that there is that mixing, and when you go to that region, you see it in Bahrain, you see it in Dubai, you see it in Fujairah, you see it everywhere. That yeah, I mean, they many people are moving towards the 21st century, which we can complain right or wrong with the technology and where it's headed, but they want that lifestyle. Even the poorest person there, they've got their cell phone, and and not even going to get into the tangent of certain countries that have internet access that probably shouldn't have it, but still, that is a benefit of it. That yeah, these countries, by and large, as you point out, they're just tired of the shitty house down the street that never cuts their grass. Got the snot nosed kids always dirty, and it's like you're just bringing down all the property values here. I mean, you look to Saudi Arabia with their looks to be kind of a mostly failed project of the line where they're making that community supposed to be all ecologically friendly and whatnot, but it is indicative of where they're trying to go. They're trying to move forward in their own ways, and this is just a necessary taking out of the trash to try to continue moving forward. But one thing I wanted to say is I am fully on board with no, I didn't vote for this. The domestic
Yes.
issues, we really didn't touch on that too much, but just really quick to run through that. What is the effect on this? I'd say for the most part, it's not really going to affect the domestic goals, the immigration, the deportations, things going on with that. But it still is distracting right now. So I hope that it's done as quickly as possible because we need to worry about America. Yes, I understand the burden of empire and things that have to be done, but do not lose, don't take your eye off the ball of what needs to be done. The Save Act, the deportations, everything, or we're not going to have a country. And as history shows, empires don't fall, hundreds or thousands of miles away from their shores. They fall from within. And we just have a huge contingent of people here that have no desire to be Americans. They're cargo cult Americans. We've seen the Somali leering centers and everywhere else, the fraud that's showing up and whatnot. And don't get me wrong, they
God.
did not have 160 IQ Somalian in Minnesota running that. No, they were just the pawns, the pieces, the way to do it. So that there's that subversive element as well that needs to get rid of. But that cannot be forgotten that whether someone is entirely unhappy with what's happening with Iran and blaming it on a certain influence here or there, or somebody is ecstatic for it happening, we're still in the same bus, on the same team, going to the same game. We do still have the same direction and goals that we need to accomplish, that we have to accomplish. So that's one thing I don't like seeing friendships getting broken up over this and people, the online terms crashing out over it and stuff. And it's like, the infighting is just this is not helpful at all. It doesn't mean we have to all be in lockstep on every single thing happening, but we all have to acknowledge this is still the same team. That is one of the greatest strengths of the left, of the Democrats and everything else. As we talked about earlier with the,
Yep.
well, they're not going to out their guy. No, no, because loyalty at the end of the day is what you need. And that's not talking about entire loyalty to God Emperor Trump as they say it. No, but loyalty to our goals, our values, and where we want our country to go.
Yeah, it's funny that the people who look the smartest based on their giant heads seem to be like the dumbest people that you'll ever meet. I mean, they're like the stereotypical of like the big brained alien with a small mouth and a giant bulbous head, but it's like it's crazy. It's like an upside down sci-fi movie or something. Um, anyway, that's enough on the Somalis, but Yeah, it's you know, the term walk and chew gum at the same time is something that conservatives always like to talk about. They always like to use that term, and it's like, can you show me that you can? You tell me that you can, but can you show me? And yeah, you can wage a war over in Iran, but you can also do the domestic policy as well if you want. It just takes the same sort of commitment to it. You know, the illegal immigration, the inflation, which this is going to cause more inflation because we're going to have to do more money to, all of that. Whether it's Israel buying weapons, whether it's us buying weapons, we're going to print money to buy weapons, and that's going to create more inflation for the country. But we're not tackling inflation. Jobs reports, whatever, GDPs, all of that nonsense. Trying to outgrow the inflation may work, may not work. You're putting all of your ducks, you're like, we're going to focus solely on Iran, the Middle East, and all of this stuff, while what? Your communities are still hollowed out. Your factory jobs that we talk about with the tariffs, we're supposed to bring back factory jobs, and they may do that in the end. Um, Trump suffered a loss on the whole tariffs thing from the Supreme Court. So, what are we talking about domestically? I mean, I'm not suffering, and I don't want to act like I am or anything like that. But there is an obvious, like, things have not gotten better economically if you just go to the grocery store, and that's how people vote. That's what they're missing in this whole deal is like, even if you have this magnificent victory in the war with Iran and the casualties are kept to 20 Americans, let's say, and we score this huge victory, Iran is liberated, the people take over, and it's all kumbaya in Tehran. No one cares in this country. They'll be proud and they'll be happy. But when you go to the grocery store and the bill is still $250, whereas 5 years ago it was $100, that hits home. That's the kitchen table economics, if you will, or the kitchen table conversations that people know every single day. Trying to keep up with the war on Iran, what's Israel doing? Are they blowing up Hezbollah and Lebanon and this, that, or the other? I'm not quite sure where that is on a map. Thank God, we're winning. And then you go try to buy something and it costs more and your wages are down and you're taxed into oblivion and all of these things. And you try to go out, go downtown to a city with the wife and have a good night, and there's a bunch of homeless people walking around harassing you that smell like piss, yelling at street lights, having an argument with a fucking street light. What are we talking about here? I mean, I can write off the interest of an automobile for 1 year. Okay, what does that even mean? That means nothing to the average person, to the normie, and people might think we use the term normie as some sort of pejorative. We don't, absolutely don't. But it's just, you're just the day-to-day American that's worried about your wife and your spouse, your kids, your home, your job, all of these things. We got to ferry the kids to soccer and basketball at the same time, and you're balancing all these plates of a family, and that's what this country is. What makes all countries great, especially this country. You go to work, you earn a living, you got a family, you got a house. Well, all of those things are not getting better. A 50-year mortgage is not going to solve that problem. We have anybody who's paid attention for 10 minutes or has been alive for 10 minutes understands that there is a housing crisis coming. We don't know when it's going to hit, but we know that it's coming. The market is going to make this correction. You can have Pam Bondi screeching about how the Dow is over $50,000, which is the craziest thing ever. $50,000. Not understanding what she's talking about. Right. 50,000 points. She said dollars.
She did?
She said dollars. Yes. I was mocking her. I was quoting her. Yeah. I think she corrected herself later on, but it was $50,000 was her initial salvo in Screech, in White Lady Screech voice. But that doesn't mean anything. She talked about 401ks are up. Okay, but your 401k is not outpacing what inflation will be when you get to that point. And if I'm supposed to rely on the equity of my home as my source of value later on in life, well, I'm not sure how I tap into that without selling it. And if the market takes a crash, well, guess what? Not only does your home lose its value, but your 401k is going to lose its value as well. So you're going to go from being a on paper millionaire, today to on paper 100,000aire tomorrow. It'll probably be cut in half. And that's the things that people really respond to when you walk into a voting booth, whether you showed your ID or not, because Congress can't get off their ass to pass that legislation. That's what it comes down to. Look no further than Abigail Spanberger winning in Virginia as governor on what? The affordability crisis. Whatever that means. All that means is inflation. That's how she won. And now she's going to enact all kinds of crazy things and gerrymander and redistrict. And that's what you do when you have power, or that's what the Democrats do when they have power. But those are the things that matter. It doesn't matter that we're victorious in Iran. It matters that the price of milk, a carton of milk, is $3, not $6. And I think that's where, I don't, more and more, I just hate both sides almost equally. But I would much rather be ruled by Republicans at this point than Democrats. But I think you'll probably agree. And if not, feel free to obviously disagree. But the midterms are going to be a bloodbath. And I won't be surprised, but just disappointed.
What I'll say to that is that we're just into March, and in politics, March till November is a lifetime. So I understand the sense that it's going to go bad. It's going to go bad, and right now the indicators are pointing to that. But it's just still a little too long a time. We have to see what happens. But as you point out with Bondi talking about the $50,000 Dow, 50,000 points, the Z Man, rest in peace. He always had a really good, however you want to say it, analogy, metaphor of you have the cloud people and the dirt people. And when he said dirt people, he was not talking about the unwashed masses that weren't worth it. He was just talking about the everyday Americans, as you point out, that just get up, go to work, take care of all their stuff, come home, maybe watch 20 minutes of ABC News with David Muir. That's it, and that's their exposure. But the cloud people, those are the ones who are looking at the 401ks, the high stakes 401ks, looking at their stocks, looking at everything that is in worship to the almighty GDP Excel spreadsheet God. The ones that love, let's bring in more H1Bs. Yeah. Oh, who cares if there's no starter homes for the younger generations?
Right.
I mean, you could almost say just basically the cloud people are the spiritual boomers, no matter the age. But Pam Bondi, that's who she was trying to talk to. And it's like, that's not the base. And that's not the people that put your boss in office. and it's definitely not
Right.
in line with the goals of what need to happen. Because saying it out loud, this can't continue forever. If this ballot box quits working, or if enough people lose the faith in these institutions, well, then there's the bullet box, and then there's the extremes, and then there's the balkanizations, which I've talked about before, about how horrific that is. And the reason I spoke on that and wrote about that was not to say it wouldn't happen, but basically to say, do you understand how bad that is? Do you want that to happen? Is that is not the silver bullet solution? It's just
Right.
another set of problems to deal in a multicultural, multiracial, multi-democracy country that we have now. People try to pretend like we're in 1860 again, and you'd have these broad lines, these set lines of here this is, here that is. No, it would be
Nope.
chaos. And every single little group that runs the little cultural enclaves, like especially here in California, they're not just going to get in lockstep behind, uh, Emperor Newsom or whatever. Like, okay, we're California. No, they'll start taking stuff out left and right. you know, it's not the solution to say to cheer on the accelerations. That was something else I forgot to point out, that I'm not happy seeing people cheer on that they want us to fall in this. We're in it, and if you're
Right.
cheering on dead Americans or you want things like that to happen, you're not on my side. You're not my friend. You're not. You're on the other side of the divide.
I want you
That's what it
deported
is.
if you're doing that.
At the least, at the very least.
Yeah, that's the sensible solution in my eyes. Like you're deported to I don't know where's that shitty prison? Was it Ecuador or whatever? Where
Seacon,
Bukele is?
yeah, El Salvador.
You're going to that one. There you go, El Salvador. El Salvador. Yeah, you're going to that one. Yeah, it's I don't know. I know, March to November is forever in politics. The point is I don't see the steps that get us to the economic prosperity and the shrinking of inflation, because when you're talking about inflation was only, 2%. It's like, well, it's 2% year over year, but it's like 30% from 5 years ago, and our spending is way over 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So your inflation can't actually come down. And even if you have the best economic policy, like if you look back to like Reagan and the Reaganomics and that legislation, Reagan comes in and interest rates are 20% or whatever they're crazy high. Paul Volcker runs the rates up to cool the economy to make things better. It took 2 years, 2.5 years to feel the effects, the good effects of those policies. So, you know, we're not in that scenario, possibly. I don't believe we are, that we were in 1980, but we're not far off either. And the idea, we're just sitting here playing pretend that we're not under the inflation that we're actually under. I just don't see the moves that get us there. And the tariffs, well, they're obviously not going to get us there because they've been deemed as not legitimate / illegal. So now what? 6 months from now is a completely different country politically. You're correct, but I think it might be worse. And that's assuming Iran goes super well and is not some sort of catastrophe, or no boots are on the ground. And that's assuming it's not still going on and during the midterms or around midterms. So there's that aspect of it. So I just don't see the steps to get us to the better economy where the average man or woman is like, yeah, I need more of this leadership, i.e. the Republicans.
Oh yeah, and don't misunderstand. I wasn't saying things are going to turn around by November. That's not what I
Mm-hmm.
was saying. I'm just saying that it is a long
Sure.
time, and the unknowns and events that could possibly happen, maybe some moves. There is that possibility for that. I can't get into the entire black pill doomer mode of it's over. I'm like, no, it's not over.
Right.
It's happening. We're moving towards wherever we're going, and indications are not good right now for sure, especially as you bring up in the housing market and where that's going to go. And just this thing of the juxtaposition that we get told all the time of how much AI is about to transform everything. And
Right.
it is eerie. How have you heard the repeated mantra of 2026 will be the last normal year? Everything will change after this. And I'm not putting on my tinfoil hat, but I'm just hearing it from way too many of your, your tech bro overlords, and from just sources that it just sounds jarring the way they talk about it, as if we know what's coming, and we're just waiting around for that. Like, okay, but if that's going to do all this, then my gosh, we should be deporting about 100,000 people a day, because we don't need any more people then. If it's going to take up 30 to 50% of the white collar employment, if it's going to revolutionize everything, I mean, you're building currently right now, there's over 400 AI data centers being constructed with another 900 plus planned, and they're all allegedly supposed to go online, within the next 5 years or something. And you still, doesn't matter if you're normie, or if you don't pay attention to it, or if you're the most online schizo, you still have to ask the question, like, where is this going, and what is the purpose of all this and all these promised things? You keep promising all these things, but you never explain it out. That's unsettling to me. That's what
Right.
keeps me up at.
Yeah, and yeah. And here where I'm at in Oklahoma, there's proposed data centers kind of peppering the landscape, if you will, and people are fucking mad about it and they don't want them there. And I don't know enough to even speak on it, but yeah, it's this like the data center archipelago basically. Someone will write a book on it. Um, I'm not impressed with AI. If you're
No.
talking about like image generation and things like that, like kind of graphic design things, then fine. But when it comes to like anything else, it's just wah wah. You know.
Well, definitely. And to clarify, it's not AI. This isn't artificial intelligence. These are just really, really, really fancy chat bots, the language
Right.
learning models and stuff. And the bigger thing,
Right. Right.
too, is you wonder, well, this is what the public is seeing, whether it's Grok, Claude, all these, little wonder boxes that, okay, yeah, they're entertaining, but what are they working on behind the scenes? What about those models? What about
Right.
what are they messing with back there? And anybody who just jumps on YouTube, you can find plenty of videos with their theories of it and where it could go, and of course the super intelligent AI and what it might want to do. And yeah, it's stuff. Yeah, okay. I used to laugh at that kind of thing years back, but we're in the reality now. Chat GPT came online in what, 2022? We're 4 years later, and to see where they think it's going to go and these promises of prosperity and utopia for all, buddy, I got a, I got a bridge. What is it? I got
Right.
oceanfront property in Arizona to say, if you're promising everyone's going to be a winner in this, no one is ever a winner. No one is all winners, regardless of the technology that comes along. The steam engine. I mean, you go down the line. There's losers in this, and it's concerning how they're not really acknowledging that aspect of it. There's a couple of little talks of, well, yeah, there'll have to be some form of universal basic income, which we kind of have for a large portion of our population as it is.
Right.
But where does this go? And I can definitely not agree with their assessments of this is going to be just cotton candy and roses for everyone in populations. We're a Western country. We are a first class country for the most part. But
Absolutely.
what does this do for Burma? What does this do for Pakistan, or any of the others that are, get mad at it, but they're struggling. They're not up to civilizational levels. How does this help the Congo? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, we'll just build a data center there and they can work there or something. But
No, they'll
I
take it
mean,
apart and make a
it
bridge
just
out of it.
strikes me as like they'll burn it as a devil
They'll
or
burn it.
something. Yeah,
Yep.
it just reminds me of the Thomas Sowell quote, and it's one of the greatest quotes of all time. There are no solutions, only trade offs. So there's going to be winners and losers in everything that you do. Any technology that comes along is making horse carriages go out of business, and a bunch of horses have to be put down and whatnot. But the streets don't have horse shit on them anymore. But then you also get pollution and whatnot. It's just any number of things. So yeah, it's probably my favorite quote of all time. No solutions, only trade offs. But anyway,
Yeah, I like that one. I like that one as well
we're
because
like,
it. I was just gonna say I like that
go
quote
ahead.
as well because it encompasses a lot of the dysfunction when people coming at you with the silver bullet. This will solve the problem, and especially in a state
Right,
like California, you see it just over and over. That wasn't a solution. There were trade offs. Yeah, a few people made money, and your NGO keeps going, and your wonderful little, for example, homeless shelter. It's in business,
right.
but there's more homeless here now. But yeah,
Exponentially more homeless for sure. Well, man, I'm gonna wrap it up. This my dog has to go outside, and I'm home alone tonight. So, anything you want to say before we get out of here?
yeah, I do a little shilling. If you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at Arthur Returns with two S's at the end. And I also have a Substack, Arthur and Cali's Thoughts. where you can not only find essays, but I also have previous recordings of me and Rudy talking about stuff and a few other shows that I've made appearances on if you so choose to want to listen to it. And thanks again, Rudy, for having me back. Always good to talk to you. And everybody have a good night.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for hanging out. We'll do it again soon, and I'll link all of Arthur's stuff in the description of this episode. But till next time, everyone, everybody stay safe. There's rough weather all around my area and surrounding states, so everybody stay safe and watch out for that twirling winds. Until next time, see y'all. Peace.